have kind of a dilemma, which for the old timers you're well aware of, and that is in our English words that are made available to us to translate certain other words, especially from the Greek. So I had to go down a little exercise in etymology and word development to kind of get to the root of something, which will clarify a lot. It clarified a lot for me, and you hear something. I heard Dr. Scott say something for years, and yet there would seem to be a missing piece to all this. So hopefully this will fill in the blanks for you. We know in the English language we have the word as a noun, belief, or as a verb, to believe, believer, noun as well. We've got an adjective, believable or believability. But what needs to be clear, which is, break this into a couple of parts. First of all, the be prefix is not natural on English nouns. It's not. And really, if you trace back this word belief, we've done this before many times, you're going to see that in Old English it was G-E, not B, and lifa, which then translated into the West Germanic loben, which then got put into German glaub and so forth. So what happens here in the oldest definitions or in the oldest search that you can do, you'll find this word crops up about the late 12th century, to hold dear or to esteem. Really from, if you want to break it down in the middle, we can leaf, which actually if you trace that word, you'll actually get the right development to the word love, beliefen, to be dear, to love. When you turn to the word faith, you've got a dilemma, which is apparently we've got adverbs for faith, connected or related words, but no verb form, no apparent verb form. But I need to correct that. And it's only when you study the development of the English language that there's a little catch in here that will make sense of something else. So let me just say this. First of all, this word, let's chop it. So let's remove the TH for a minute and let's just use the fay, F-A-I. And what you'll see is our word faith obviously comes from fay or fay, F-E-I, F-A-I, which ultimately we get words like fide. From the Proto-Indo-European root, which looks like this, bide, which really is being translated to trust. Why is this problematic? Because each time, let me take a new page. I'd like to write over my own writing, but then you won't be able to read it, and neither will I. That doesn't work for anybody. It only works for Dr. Scott. So the problem is when you, God bless him, you just got to love the idea that he could read through his own stuff, because I just couldn't. But it's okay. I probably wasn't fixing on the words. I was probably just looking at him, so it didn't matter. So when we find, for example, I'm using a verb form of pistuo, or actually I'm looking at it from John 11, what becomes apparent is I was trying to find the connection, because most words can be traced from our English backwards. So I know that the English connection of fe, or fides, or fe, just like that. I see the connection, but I can't see it back into the Greek until I do two things. The first one is to understand that in English, our word for faith, I want you to think of it as a connected word. And I chop the TH, because if you look up the suffix ending TH in the development of English words, what you're going to find is it is a suffix forming nouns of action. Suffix, you can check me out, suffix nouns of action. Can also be describing a state or quality. Some of you are going, I got to go check this out. Good, go do it. kind of the way verbs or adjectives might work. So I want you to see what will happen in English. We take the word deep, for example, and we're trying to give the word some action or description. We will go to the word depth. There's your ending. The same thing is true with strength. We use the word strong, but to give it a sense. So do you see the activity that's happening? Not to be confused with th that is used of forming ordinal numbers, like the fourth, the fifth, and so forth. Don't confuse them. If you were looking up in a dictionary, you'd find th has 2 or 3 headings as suffix. One of them is what I just described, the other one is ordinal, and there's also a third use as well. So this explains a few things for us, because it's hard to make the connection, you know, and I've wrestled with this for so long. What happened in our linguistic development to limit this great word? Well, the reality is that in other languages, in all other languages, especially in the Latin languages, these words, fe, fides, fe, can be conjugated in verbal forms, but not in English. However, if one is not familiar with the functioning of the th suffix on nouns, you would strictly limit it to what we just did. Let's go back a page. Let's save this. All right, so you'd end up feeling like you're limited. You see, you have an adverb here, faithfully. So the trick is to understand the development of this. Even though we are seeing it as a noun, really that's not a true statement. It really takes understanding the development of the English language to realize, although faith will be labeled as a noun in a dictionary, if you look up the functioning of the suffix, it gives it action. So I thought I'd clarify that because it really bothered me. And then there's something else that needs to be said on this same subject, which is, does this word connect, is pisteuon or pisteo or pistuos, does it connect with fe, fides, or fe? And the answer to that question is yes and no. So let me tell you what happens. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about confidence, the word confidence, and I used the word pytho. So pytho, which kind of looks like that, but let's put it into words, letters we can actually read, and let's put this into something we can read. So the development of pisteo or pistuo or any cognate of that word is actually, the source emanates from this pytho word. If you trace them back, and I'm off the top of my head, I want to say it's Strong's 3982. Anybody have a Strong's? I do. Okay, pytho. Convince, by argument, true or false, by analogy, to pacify, conciliate, reflexive or passive, to assent, evidence or authority, to rely. Okay, you get that. So if I were to look at our faith word, 4102. So when you look up Strong's 4102, pistis, you're gonna see it says from 3982. Now, why am I telling you this? Why on earth should you know this? Just 'cause. So here's our English connection. I want you to see it, and then it'll kind of settle the matter that's really bugged me for a long time. So what we have is this. We have, I've got this here, itho, right? You see the itho. Let's put another color. There's our how we would develop our suffix ending. And because there is no F in Greek, when we bring it into the English realm, our this turns into this, which then gets turned into this, which develops into, wow, this sounds good on radio. Is that, do you kind of see a connection now? It bothered me because I could not see the connection between the words unless you understand that the pisteo word is related to pytho. And pytho, think of pytho this way. Think of pytho as persuasion. So when rhetoric was being used in the Greek world, when rhetoric was being used, the ultimate goal of rhetoric was pytho, to persuade. And upon persuasion, once someone could be persuaded about something, then pisteuo, which if you think of it as a logical progression, when the word is being presented, so when Paul is standing before Agrippa and Agrippa says, "Thou almost persuadest me," pytho. So there's the connection of these words to show you. It was quite bothersome for me because I could not see the connection between faith and how we would get from, the King James obviously liked the word believe, belief, but there's something other that needs to be said on that one word, which unfortunately we lose in the process of our language, which is that at the time the King James was being translated, the word believe or belief had a different meaning than, when I say had a different meaning, hold that thought for a minute, than how it was carried into a more modern frame. If you look in any etymological dictionary, you'll find this. This is not my revelation. Ito or Oxford will list the same thing I'm about to tell you, which is the time that the King James was being produced and this word was being used, it carried the connotation that it was belief in God, very much the way pisteuo or pisteo translated ultimately the belief or the faith in God. Along the way, our lack of words or a lack of understanding thereof limited the frame, because we do have the sense, even though it's a noun, of faith, we have the sense of understanding it can have action to it based on the suffix ending. The th gives it the activity, which is why we don't have a verbal form. Dr. Scott was right, we should, but if one understands the language, we don't necessarily need one, because you can see it in the development. The th is what that suffix ending presents. Now, if somebody doesn't know that, you're going to think noun. But faith is an action. Unfortunately, the bulk of our Bible contains the word belief. So I think the best thing to do is just to keep all of this in your back pocket somewhere, or scratch it on the cover of your Bible, so that if somebody ever says to you, well, how does this equal that, you at least have a pathway to navigate on to understand we are limited. The Greek was not. And from the Greek perspective, realistically, pisteuo came because of pytho. Now, in our frame, I would say it this way. Maybe we would do well to say someone can believe in something, which ultimately that belief will lead to faith. That falls short of the building blocks, but it gives the perspective of the limit of these words, and the suffix that at least gives us the little glimmer of hope that yes, it does carry action with it.
To this house, magnify the Lord, lift up holy hands, our hearts in one accord, worship and bow down before Him, exalt His name today. Come into this house,